Hi, guys. Welcome to Synchro Mystic. I'm Wayne McCroy. This is Richard Willett, and together we're taking apart the narratives that are crafting our reality into existence. How are you today, Richard? It's been quite the week, hasn't it?
I am good in a way. I almost feel like we've entered a different realm of understanding. Something's happened here with these Epstein files that has been incredibly positive for the work we do. And I know we're hesitant to say about those things because we're not psychologically trained to look at good things. But something's shifted now, and it's opened up the scope of conversation that we can have. And people like me and you that have been talking about some of these very, very deep esoteric goings on. Now that's on the table to talk about with the guy that come around my house today. Lovely guy. He's painting the living room, putting the wallpaper up, talking about this stuff with me. And he's a little bit open to this stuff anyway, but I can see it now. And I've got a few of them here. It's early days. There's 3 million of them allegedly. Um, but the great thing about it is that with people like me and you, Wayne, is that we know what we're looking for. So when we go looking, we don't need to trawl through everything because we know what we want to find. Have you managed to have a look at any yourself at the moment?
I've briefly glanced at some things other people have posted, and I've checked into them, and I'm finding a lot of really concerning things. I mean, this is all stuff you and I have known for years, Richard, and have been trying to tell people. Now, this is just validation of all of this stuff. I mean, it's really going on, and this is solid evidence, and the mainstream has no choice now but to acknowledge that there's something to this. But I do find it interesting that you get an awful lot of people making claims about things that they allegedly found in these Epstein files now without really posting any direct link or anything to the specific file or anything like that. So we need to be aware of disinformation and misinformation about this stuff as well. But certainly it's all on the table now. They've ripped away the veil, and now it's been exposed for what it is. It's out in the open. There is openly an occult, satanic cult
Mm.
running the world. They're pedophiles and they're despicable people, and they do some very heinous things. So, all of this stuff that has been circulating in conspiracy culture for years now, well, now it's being pretty much proven to the public just by the release of these files. Now, a lot of people will also say that just because it says something in an email, that doesn't prove anything. Well, when you're talking about some of these high echelon figures in the world, talking about stuff in not only coded language, but openly as well, what more evidence do you need that something's going on? One of the big releases I saw relates to conversations between Bill Gates and Epstein regarding pandemic situations and cashing in on those 2 years prior to the rollout of the whole COVID scam on the world. And this goes way back as well. And of course, other things are coming to the light of day now, Richard, that you and I have talked about. And I know you've spoken to Juliette Bryant on a number of occasions about her experiences and the things that she was saying. Well, now that's all getting validated through these email releases, too. So she's not the only victim. And I know we know she's not the only victim. There's been plenty of them. And this goes much deeper than just selling people for sexual services and stuff like that. It's all about the human genome. It's about engineering a new form of mankind, humanity 2.0. Epstein was all about this stuff, and so are many of the other higher level figures that were in his network. And here's the thing: Epstein was a lower tier figure. He was not one of the highest, most within that network organizing things. So he was kind of their sacrificial lamb of sorts that they fed to the big system here so that they could have a little bit of plausible deniability about it. But there are other figures that have been involved in this in the past, and David Icke, give him credit. He was calling this stuff out in the 90s when he revealed Seville's all evils going on there over in the UK and his relationship with the royal family and all of that stuff. And that guy was an ultimate scumbag. And all of this came out. It was known now after he had died that he was doing all of this heinous stuff, and he was trafficking children, and he was a big time scumbag, really. You're practicing necrophilia and other things like that as well. So these are the types of people that hang around in the circles of power in this world. And these are like the only the lower tier people in this the operative phases of this. Now here's the problem. We know Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking people and children specifically as well to various people around the world. But now I think we as citizens we need to speak up and we need to say there needs to be accountability because he was not just trafficking these people to nobody. He was trafficking them to very important world figures with a lot of power and influence in this world. And it's known and it's coming out in these emails now. And we need to insist that there needs to be accountability. And I don't know how we go about that, Richard. I don't know how we insist as an average citizen that our enforcement agencies hold these people accountable. But we need to do that. We need to really not just take the back seat on this stuff and try to ignore it. Because if we do that, then that just plays right into their hands. This is all part of the revelation of the method that they use all the time with this kind of stuff. They're telling you now, okay, we did all of this. What are you going to do about it? That's kind of what they're doing. So nobody will be held accountable. And that's the sad state of affairs because the people we've entrusted with enforcing the policy and with protecting us from this and holding these people to account, well, they're not going to do it because they're in on it.
Yep.
That's a lot of the problem. At the highest, most levels, you get involved with the intelligence agencies. They're all intertwined in this. And I think it's safe to say at this point that Epstein was openly working for Mossad. I think that's a safe assessment to make at this point, too. We've always suspected that, and we've said that, and always thought that was true, but it would appear from some of the releases in the emails that, yeah, that's absolutely the case. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this, Richard? I know you've looked at some of this already.
Yeah, there's several things. I think you're right there. The first point I'd like to sort of add to what you've just said is about how do we hold these people accountable. The first thing we do is we don't let it go. There's a crack in the dam here. We don't let it go. We keep reporting on this as we've done. The reason why it's been got to this point is because people like us, people like David, people like many of the Charlie Robinsons of the world, the guys that do all of this work in the background have kept this going. And therefore, the other ones that get all the spotlight have had to comment on this as too, like the Alex Jones of the world, like the ones that will brush it under the carpet, but they've been forced to comment on this because that's where the audience wants to, they want to know the truth. So we keep going, but now we've been legitimized with all this stuff. So you mentioned the first thing we'll talk. I want to talk about Bill Gates later on as well, and talk about the pandemic side of that thing because this shows how wide and connected this. But the first thing I'd like to speak about this is total confirmation of what Juliet Bryant was saying. She told me she woke up paralyzed, naked, under Zorro Ranch or whilst being held at Zorro Ranch. She didn't know where she was. She was in a laboratory table. There were 6 or 7 people around her. A woman spoke to her. She was kept there for 3 weeks, but she thought she was only there for a few days. But when she looks back, it looks like she was there for longer. In Zorro Ranch, New Mexico. We've looked at all of the other places around. She believed her eggs were being harvested. So we've been looking into that for 2.5 years. The relationship of the butterfly symbology, which I believe is now Atlas. Could be Lilith, could be Psyche, but Atlas is the 229 chromosome pairs. It's a transhumanist agenda. I was pretty firm on that anyway. But then to see this email, this is from Jeffrey Epstein in 2018. So it says, from Jeffrey to a guy called Brian Bishop. Attached is the doc you requested. It's the use of funds spreadsheet for the designer baby and human cloning company. This gets us out of our self-funded garage biology phase. Where do you think that garage was? It's underground. It's underground where he ordered that £50,000 cement truck to the island 3 weeks before. And even if it isn't, go and have a look. They're even talking about it in their own emails. So he says, this gets us out of our self-funded garage biology phase, he puts in quote marks, to the first live birth of a human designer baby and possibly a human clone within 5 years. Where do you think they were harvesting and putting those eggs? What do you think is going on under New Mexico? Exactly what I've been saying and other people have been saying for a long time in Los Alamos, Dulce Base, Trementina site, which is the Church of Spiritual Technology. You've got Zorro Ranch there. You've got the Roswell crash there. You've also got Edwards Air Force Base not too far away. There's something going on. Now, I'm not saying I got all the details right. I'm not saying that. But look, they're talking about it themselves because this is the way they think. And what this has done is legitimized the questions that we've been asking. These are legitimate questions of this death cult, this transhumanist, messianic death cult. And and Epstein was just part of that. He is openly talking about genetic experiments. We knew he was involved with George Church, Colossal Biosciences. We knew that Colossal Biosciences that you brought to the table with me and highlighted to me was resurrecting the dire wolf, Romulus and Remus. Elon Musk also appears in these. He's begging to go to the island. I've looked into this. The emails as well show that he was looking for party tips on nearby islands and St. Bart's. Years after, this is 2014, years after Epstein had already been convicted as a child trafficker and for prostitution. Years after, he's asking for party tips on St. Bart's. We know that his 13th child was conceived on St. Bart's Island with Ashley St. Clair being one of these bloodline names. Romulus and Remus, the dire wolf, Colossal Biosciences, George Church, and also the fact that he called the child Romulus, and then Ashley St. Clair's wearing the black dress with the silver star on the side because Romulus and Remus were raised by a wolf, the she-wolf. This has legitimate research now because of the emails, and it was legitimate to me and you anyway, but it's legitimized by their own vocabulary and what they're saying is going on. So I want to be proven wrong. I hope there's no children or experiments going on under St. Bart's or under New Mexico, but there is plenty enough for the FBI to go and look. Now, the FBI raided Epstein Island 3 weeks after he ordered a cement truck because he was tipped off to fill in something. He was ordering anesthetic and dental chairs and instruments. And there's another one that goes into this lady that reported that so this was, I'll quickly read this out and then I'll get back to you because I just want to get this bit in. This lady had a horrific, so this was one of the ladies that said she's this report. I'd heard this before, but this is in the files as well. So this is an account. I was taken, it's not Juliet Bryant, by the way, it's another young lady. I was taken to an underground location. I was blindfolded so I would not know exactly where I was at. It was dark, and when we went through the doors, we went downstairs. There was also an elevator in the location. I was kept in a stall. It looked like a horse stall. They had short walls on the side so you could see inside. It wasn't really to keep me and the other girls inside. It was to make it where we could be viewed. Epstein would walk past each girl, including myself, with a lot of men following him, and they would judge us. He told me I was a fat and ugly, so that's what he called me. And then there's a blanked out spot. And someone, and he said I had to pretend it was him to see if I performed well. He said if I performed well, I could be his girlfriend. Then I would be allowed upstairs, is what he called it. And then there's more here, but I won't go into the rest. It's horrific. This is in the Virgin Islands. This is happening. And how many more times do the people need to understand this before this gets investigated? Because it's a death cult. And these transhumanist parts of it go into Aleister Crowley, they go into the Moonchild, they go into Rosemary's Baby, they go into Jack Parsons, they go into L. Ron Hubbard, Trementina website. So this is just, to me, confirmed everything we're saying. But what it really means to me more than anything is that these are legitimate conversations you can have with people and show them irrefutable files from the own files talking about this stuff that backs up everything we've been saying for years. So it's a very, very disturbing time, but the dam has broke in their satanic exterior, and there's no coming back from this. So we just got to keep the pressure on, Wayne.
Right? The floodgates are opening, and we absolutely need to keep the pressure on. And this is a message to these elitist scumbags that have been performing this. The party's over.
Mm-hmm.
The party's over. The people know you're not going to get away with it anymore. So judgment's coming, and whether that be human judgment or divine judgment or both, there's something big about to happen on the horizon here, upcoming. So this has an awful lot of concerning elements to it. And one aspect to this that's been going on quietly for years is the connection to the UFO phenomenon or the UAP phenomenon with this. And this is another missing piece that I think we're going to really see the floodgates start to open with here very soon in the year 2026. Many are calling it the year of disclosure. And there is actually a British filmmaker out there stating that come July 8th of this year, President Trump is supposed to go public and make an announcement regarding the existence of extraterrestrials and our communication with them. So this is another interesting aspect as well. So whether it's true or not, keep this in mind, guys. Whether any of it's true or not is irrelevant, okay? It's what these people in the high levels of power believe or they want you to believe. And this is what they're going to probably do. They're probably going to tie this all back to this alien presence, is probably how they're going to approach this. Because we've known for years, and it's been discussed in the UFO community for years, the abduction phenomenon and the hybrid engineering of a partially human, partially something else race, a hybrid race. They've been talking about this for a long time. And an important element of this whole UFO phenomenon, of the abduction phenomenon, is something called MILABs. Are you familiar with MILABs, Richard? This is military abductions. Many have reported that they've woken up under the auspices of being abducted, and they found that there's humans involved in this, and that they are actually in some type of a military base or something like that. And oftentimes they have a very hazy memory of this, but this is also part of it as well. So how much of it actually goes along with this transhumanist moonchild breeding program of these occultists and these various satanic pedophiles and stuff out there of this network, and how much of it really has some foreign element to it. Now, don't get me wrong. I am really of the utmost belief that there is a spiritual component to this, that there are spiritual intelligences that communicate and steer all of this behind the scenes with some of these high level players, and that there's that element to it. And this is certainly what this podcast is based upon, this synchromystic metadata. This synchromystic metadata is information that's put out in the greater information field, the zeitgeist, if you will, by these spiritual intelligences, because they need to communicate in some way, shape, or form to some of these people that are involved with this stuff. And these people involved with this stuff get their marching orders through that. And that sometimes there's certain things that seem to occur without direct communication from person to person. And how do we explain that away? Well, you could call it coincidence if you want, but it's not, because there's certainly an intelligence steering this. This is the nature of synchronicity in many regards. Now, synchronicities happen on the good side of things too, but certainly we have this spiritual component involved with it, and it ties directly to this UFO phenomenon, and it ties directly to this satanic death cult that's running things in this world, has been quietly doing so behind the scenes, behind the veil, for many years. But we are living in the time of revelation, and all of this is coming to the light of day. It's being exposed for what it is. And we're just now, for the first time, seeing it in real time, up close and personal in the real world, out in the light of day, rather than it being secretly done in the background somewhere. And, people being paid hush money or just being totally gaslighted about their experience and stuff like that. Well, now there's legitimacy. This is a turning of the page. We're at a major crossroads here in the culture, Richard.
It's funny you should say that, and again, there's some synchronicity here, and we haven't actually spoken about this between the two of us. I've been reading this book lately. I was going to get it. I'm going to wheel myself over here. Now, again, I take things with a pinch of salt, but this is all about everything that I said about Jack Parsons, about Aleister Crowley, comes in the. I'd never heard of this book before. I never heard of anything. I came to these conclusions myself about the Moonchild and the Rosemary's Baby. I found this book through another book that mentioned something called the Collins Elite. Now, I'd never heard of the Collins Elite before. Now, allegedly, there
I
are.
podcasting about the Collins
Have
Elite.
you? And never
Yes,
heard of them before. Now, I'm not saying they exist, but there's clearly an element within the Pentagon that have a messianic belief system. And I know this is true simply because Pete Hegseth has openly talked about, I did a video about this last week and an article, building the third temple. He wishes for the third temple to be built. He said it in 2018 at a speech at the King David Hotel, of all places in Jerusalem. So we know that he's on board for this messianic agenda, and now he's supposed to be in charge of the Pentagon. So there is a religious extremist element inside the Pentagon. Now, that would align with the Collins Elite. And I'm not saying the Collins Elite were absolutely something, but there's clearly something to this in terms of a religious fanatical element of bringing about these end times. So there's a lot of truth in that book in the sense of the overall themes, especially when it comes to Crowley. So these Collins Elite, if people don't understand, don't have never heard of them before, believed that UAPs are actually demonic entities and not aliens or anything from another world. They believe they're actual demonic entities that were allowed in because of the Babylon working ritual of Crowley and the atomic weapons that have gone off. Now, I think there's some truth to this. I genuinely do in terms of probably I would put it more into an interdimensional thing myself personally, but it doesn't really matter. There's definitely an element to this, but it really matters what they think. Now, I've also tied this to the Book of Jubilee because in the Book of Jubilee, which is not a canonical book, but it's in the Ethiopian canon, it says that Yahweh allowed 10% of the Nephilim after the flood to survive so they could haunt humanity. And basically, that would test humans' devotion to Yahweh. Now, I wonder if some of these Collins elite, whatever you want to call them, these guys who are very evangelical, believe that they need to bring about the end times to bring the end of these Nephilim demonic entities because they say that this demonic entity and the one that actually runs it, and I forgot the name of it, and I shouldn't do because I've just done a video on it. I don't know if you remember his name from the Jubilee. He was Book of Jubilees. He's the guy that's king of the demonic entities. I forget his name now. Begins with M, I think. What? Sorry,
Azazel, maybe.
it's
Is
not
that the one?
Azazel. No, but it's a variant of that. Um,
Jubilees in a long
um, and this guy is supposed to only be
time. Yeah.
around until they bring around the time when humans can live over a certain age. So there's a transhumanist element to it. So I think they're trying to bring around the conditions to possibly get rid of these entities because they believe they're saving the world, repairing the world, Tikkun Olam. Remember, I've just read to you a whole Epstein thing about transhumanism and cloning. They think weird. They think like a cult. So we don't have to believe any of this, as you just said. So it's worth looking into all these different things. So when me and someone like Wayne have done this research, go and look in the files and look into the search engine, we're not putting in so much Bill Gates or vaccines. I'm typing in cloning and I'm typing in Book of Jubilee and I'm typing in the Third Temple, things like that, because they're the things that I think that really, really are the ones that are getting you. And we've got this thing in the UK, and I'll just end on this, where people are blaming. It's quite funny over here because I've got the UK Parliament MPs have come out and said that Epstein was working for Putin, which is hilarious in a way, but there's also some truth to that because Epstein and Putin and Netanyahu and all of them were in the same cult. So what that does is gets a kickback from the English and British again. Of course he bloody wasn't. You're always blaming Putin. It was the Mossad. It was Israel. Well, yes, it was. But it was also Putin as well, because he's involved. And in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, CHS report, and this was in their documents, in the files, Epstein files, the CHS, this is one of the files, advised Chabad is doing everything it can to co-opt the Trump presidency. Trump was bailed out by the Rothschild, so there's not much, you didn't need to do much. Chabad is basically state-sanctioned Judaism. This is their report, the FBI's report. It is used by Putin to keep tabs on all Russo Jewish oligarchs. On the day Trump was elected president, Ivanka Trump and Jared were at the gravesite of Rabbi Schneerson, who was the most powerful rabbi in the Chabad network. Jared didn't disclose his stake in Cadre because of his ties to the Russian state. CHS believe is the real Russian collusion story. Kushner has moved a lot of Russian investment money around. The FBI should investigate Kushner's family. Chabad routinely use charities to launder money. They do. And Putin's involved with Chabad, and Netanyahu's involved with Chabad, and Trump's involved with Chabad because they are all one big cult. So what they're doing in the UK now is they're trying to get people to side with Putin. He's the one who's been picked on. And you can see it. And it's like, they're all bad. They're all in on it. It's very, very obvious. They're trying to create a dynamic within the same cult.
It's all of them. And
Yeah.
that's the problem we have, Richard. It's all of them. You're not going to be able to go to one faction or the other and say, hey, something needs to be done here because they're all in on it.
Yeah.
It's a big game and it's a big giant club, and we're not in the club. And that's a lot of the problem. But we have all of these different connections. And of course, you spoke on the outset of this portion of the conversation about the Collins elite. Well, this is certainly a faction within the Pentagon that does have the viewpoint that whatever is being described here as extraterrestrials are more likely interdimensional beings or are demonic in some sort. They do have that viewpoint, and they do approach this stuff with that, and there's very many reasons for that. Now, this Collins elite group, that might not be what their actual name that they're known by is. In fact, I doubt very highly that it is. But this is how it's been identified by certain researchers like Nick Redfern. He calls them the Collins elite because there's an attachment back to that royal family bloodline, the Collinses, which are known heavily for their attachments to witchcraft and sorcery and magical abilities. This is a true thing. If you go back and you research this into the occult families, I would highly recommend pick up Fritz Springmeier's book, The Bloodlines, the Occult Bloodlines of the Illuminati, the 13 family bloodlines, where he breaks down a lot of this stuff very extensively and shows the connections. But that's one aspect to this. And there is that attachment, once again, to the UFO field. Lou Elizondo, if you've heard of Lou Elizondo, he's one of the major figures in UFO disclosure. He's come out publicly and stated that this Collins elite group does exist within the Pentagon, and he's had run-ins with them. And he's trying to get a lot of the information out into the open. And this has to do everything with what's being largely called now the legacy program, which is something that's now an acknowledged thing within the halls of officialdom. There's this legacy program that's been hidden away from congressional oversight and everything for the longest time. So we have this military industrial complex involvement in the UFO field, and we have this certain faction within that seems to think there's extra dimensional ties to this. And this goes back a long time. I don't know how much work you've done on UFOs and the UFO phenomenon, Richard, but I've done an extensive amount on it. And a lot of this harkens back to a letter written by a guy named Gerald Light. And this has to do with Eisenhower's ostensible meeting with extraterrestrials at Muroc Air Base back in the late 1950s. So this is wherein an important element of this was revealed, because you could find this letter. I actually have it. I can send you it, give you a little homework here to do, Richard, because I think it'll help you later if you want to look into the UFO side of this. Well, Gerald Light wrote a letter to one of his buddies. I forget who it was that the letter was addressed to, but he talked about when Eisenhower was taken away when he was on vacation for supposedly he had a toothache or something and had to go see the dentist, and he disappeared for like 3 days or something while he was on vacation. Well, this is when he supposedly had this meeting with extraterrestrials at Muroc Air Base. And Gerald Light gives this rendition of what happened there, and he describes these beings, these alien beings, as Etherians. Now, this is massively important because this has everything to do with the etheric principle and the etheric realm all around us, the etheric portion of reality. I've been doing a lot of heavy research into this as of late, And this is the important element to everything going on today, is this connection to the etheric. So he described them as what he called Etherians, and said that they actually are kind of extra dimensional in no uncertain terms rather than extraterrestrial, and that their technologies were just bafflingly advanced. And they were letting them look at the technology and explaining how they worked and stuff like that. Well, this guy was here present, and there was also a Bishop McIntyre or something like that who was supposedly present, and things like this as well. So this is all documented, and this is actually in the CIA's files. If you go and look, it's all been declassified. So we have this letter from Gerald Light, and I've looked at this, and there's a lot of people that say this Gerald Light fellow was kind of a charlatan and things like that. But I don't get that sense from having looked at some of what is known about him. I think this was possibly a legitimate thing, or at least this is what he believed was going on. But he was there and he was part of it, and I'm sure Laura Eisenhower has spoken about this meeting and stuff as well. Probably get some more information from her about that. But as far as this stuff goes, this is one of the important key elements to it. And I think this is one of the reasons why this Collins elite branch within the Pentagon formed, because they realize, okay, these aren't exactly what we thought they were initially. These aren't necessarily extraterrestrials from other planets or something physically coming here. They're already here. They're part of the etheric portion of reality. They're from a different dimension. And this, I think, is why they made the attachments back to the old religious principles and decided maybe there is something to some of the religious scriptures as far as this stuff goes, and these may be some sort of demonic entity or fallen angelic being, as you described here, with this connection back in the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch, all of this. This is describing the Watchers, the fallen ones, the Nephilim. Once again, going back into antiquity, we have a breeding program, don't we? A human alien breeding program of sorts, when we have the emergence of the Nephilim, who are said to be giants. And of course, along with that, you have this connection, and I've seen some people connecting the dots, that some of this came up in the Epstein files too. The tomb of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh was said to be a giant, and this was found in Iraq, and that's when we set in the U.S. troops and stuff there at that point when they discovered this, and they were trying to harvest artifacts and stuff like that. This is what some of the claims were, and it came up in the emails. Like I said, you don't have to believe any of this, okay? Doesn't matter if you believe it or not. There's people in positions of power in this world that very much believe in this stuff, and the things they do to act upon their beliefs affect all of us. So regardless of what your spiritual point of view is, your religious point of view, whatever, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. This is what they believe. This is what they act on. And these emails that are coming out, these Epstein files, are showing in no uncertain terms that we've been 100% correct in saying this. They do believe this stuff. They do act on this stuff. And some of the things they do to get their beliefs out there or to act on their beliefs is totally heinous. And they are all about this breeding program and developing humanity 2.0 through the use of this Moonchild narrative that they've used. And that's only one angle to it. That's the occult side of it. It's the creation of the homunculus. It's a soulless being, essentially, a soulless container for a disembodied soul that needs a container. This is exactly what they're trying to build. And it all has to do with this influence from the other side of the veil, from the spiritual realms. That's in my view. And this is essentially what I see going on. So we have an awful lot just enveloped there, and a lot of it is now getting mainstream attention. And that's good, because now these conversations, like you said, Richard, now they're on the table for the vast majority of people who are actually seeing this stuff for the first time and are like flabbergasted by it. Now they know it's not all smoke and mirrors, and it's not all nonsense or conspiratainment, if you want to call it that. This stuff's really happening. These people are really doing heinous things, and they have been for a long time, and now it's coming to the light of day.
It's so fascinating what you said there, and you actually mentioned this as well. I'm gonna get it. Walking over here, guys. I'll be back. There you go. So this is the book. You remember I mentioned the book that I heard about, the Collins Elite in. It was the one you just mentioned, Luis Elizondo, and I wasn't too sure about the whole book and a lot of stuff in it, but that was the bit that caught me. I was like, the Collins elite, and then you had this. He connected it to these evangelical guys, and I was like, there is something there. So I kind of read that, and then I found the other book as well. This Final Events book, which went more into it. And I've had people having a go at me saying it's all disinformation now, but it really does match in that other stuff that we're talking about. But you mentioned earlier, and I want to pick your brains with this then. So going forward, this is kind of bringing all this stuff to the fore. And you know a lot more than I do about the UAP stuff, and I've only really started to look into it. You say that was it the July the 8th, or did you say July the 8th? He wants to Trump to talk about aliens and stuff like that.
That's what the claim of the
Yeah.
filmmaker who's producing a new UFO documentary is saying right now. He's I don't know the guy's name, I don't remember, but I've seen social media posts about this, and the claim is Trump is going to disclose on July 8th the existence of extraterrestrials and our interaction with them on the date of the Roswell anniversary.
Right.
So this is something that's important as well. I mean, they always harken back to some of these dates for various reasons. There's an occult connotation involved with that. But I do suspect from the things I've seen, we are going to get some sort of disclosure coming forward here very soon as far as things that have been known in the past about the UFO phenomenon and stuff like that that they've kept hidden, or we're going to be at least told that yes, there's secret programs and we're trying to find out what's going on with them because they've been hidden from us. We're starting to see soft disclosures like that going on,
Mm.
right?
So
And
do you
I
see this
suspect
part of it, Wayne? Do you see this part, some of this stuff as part of this soft disclosure, or it'll just be weaponized that way, in a way to say, look, yes, that we were doing these things, but there was a good reason for doing these
that
things.
because
There's
the
inter
aliens make us do it. That I
yeah.
think is probably one of their excuses that they'll have. We were being influenced by the aliens and we didn't know. So we're innocent of all of it. We wash our hands of all of it. It was these guys. So now we need to develop a massive new weapons program so we could protect ourselves from these invaders from space and stuff like that. They could go all different directions with this. And that's the whole point. It all ties together. There's always been this element within all of it, within the UFO disclosure movement. And of course, there's so many aspects to it as well. And they're going to use this whole narrative as a means of trying to maintain their grip on power. And this is one of the things within the UFO field that is massively important. There's transformative technologies involved. You're talking free energy. You're talking about the ability to essentially travel anywhere like almost instantaneously with the use of the energy, free energy devices that don't actually burn up any fuel or about the size of a basketball could run your entire house like for infinity. We're talking about technologies like that. And there's just so much that this would do, so much implication to the release of this information and the existence of these technologies to the public that would actually challenge the power players of this world. It would collapse entire economies. It would make the oil industry almost obsolete overnight. Think about that. And these are the things that they know. And that's why they're trying to maintain a grip on the control of the release of this. Now, in a lot of the research I've done, I've found that many of these technologies that they claim are UFO type technologies or extraterrestrial technologies, many of them have been developed. There's a clear lineage of development through by human beings through the course of time developing these things, and a lot of it's been hidden away. A lot of it went deep black in 1957 with the foundation of NASA and the integration of NASA. They were at that time openly discussing in the literature, in the peer reviewed literature, in the scientific magazines of the time, they were talking about electrogravitic technology, or what they called dynamic counterberry. In 1957, much of that disappeared behind the scenes and was not seen again after that. Now, there were a couple of releases in the 1960s talking about this stuff, but nothing major. And then you find a giant gap in the record of the development of these technologies, and it's since disappeared. And now they're trying to say that well, it's all nonsensical. It never panned out. this kind of stuff. Even though John Lear used to talk
Mm.
decades ago about how his father was involved in some of these programs at Bell Labs and other places, and he's Lear Aircraft, and he was talking about in the future we'll have like something that looks like a telephone booth, and you'll be able to teleport from Los Angeles to New York City through the telephone booth like instantaneously. John Lear used to talk about this stuff. I don't know how much of his interviews and stuff you can find online anymore. Anyway, so the whole point here is you used to be able to find a lot of these videos readily online. You can't find them anymore. So that's something that's also telling too. They've been scrubbing a lot of this stuff that's come forward that has factual bits of information attached to it. So people can't find it now. So now they could just say, "Oh, that's all conspiracy theory. That's all garbage." And
Yeah.
there's not much evidence to back it up these days. But I've seen a lot of things. I've researched a lot of things about this, and certainly we have these technological developments that would transform society. So, how do they keep these hidden away? Well, they use concerns like national security risk, and they use black budget programs, and they use all of these classification systems, compartmentalization to keep them hidden away and to keep them from coming out to the public, because to bring this stuff out would transform society overnight, and it would collapse the whole entire financial system of this world, and they know that. And that's where all of these power players, these elite family bloodlines and stuff, are all centralized right now. They have the wealth, they have the power. Well, all that goes away if this
Yep.
stuff comes public, if people have access to it. So they can't have that. So they've kind of turned into what I would call a breakaway civilization, trying to keep a lot of these technologies and stuff hidden from humanity because they don't want us to have it. And of course, they'll use this alien component or this extraterrestrial component as an excuse to keep that stuff hidden away or to say, we don't know what this is. We've been monitoring this stuff, we've been watching it. This is unlike anything that we're able to develop. And they'll use that. And this has even been addressed by the CIA. They knowingly have admitted that they use the UFO phenomenon as kind of a mask for hiding stuff, for hiding technologies and things like that, and for intimidating our foreign adversaries in that way. And they use it as this whole type of an element to hide stuff. Let's put it that way. And it's the same thing with these occultic ties to all of it too. Now, I do think, like I said, there's an element of truth to the non-human intelligence aspect to it. I think that's certainly involved, but I don't think the vast majority of what you would see as the UFO phenomenon, especially today in 2026, is really those sort of non-human intelligence crafts or anything flying around. I think it's mostly human technology we're seeing now. That's why we have a massive uptick in these sightings, and a lot of it's drone technology. But that's neither here nor there. I think we got a little off topic, but it certainly all relates back. But there's this huge UFO component to it, and I think they're going to use this whole disclosure push as a means of sweeping a lot of their crimes of the past under the rug.
That makes total sense, them coming out and saying we had to do this because one, we were being forced to do it, or we knew something you didn't. And I completely get that. And I'm trying to kind of push it forward to see where they're going with this. Now they're setting up Putin as they're trying now in the UK, setting up Putin as the goody, although he's in the same cult. They need those polarities. But what also he's coming out and been saying for a while is the West is satanic. The West is all turned into a satanic cult, all this stuff, which in a way, there's a lot of truth to it. There's always a lot of truth to what they say. Not us. The British royals clearly are satanic, but he's in the cult with the Satanists. So do you see a time where, because I do, well, I can see them going, well, it was the West that brought all this stuff into our realm. All of their messing around in Mexico, all messing around with all these occult traditions, all this paganism, all of this stuff has brought on these entities from elsewhere. And we had this faction in the Pentagon, the Collins Elite, or whatever they want to call themselves, that have been monitoring this. And now we were doing all those experiments to create a human who could survive this onslaught that we knew were coming. That kind of reckoning and then the Armageddon end of it, and the end times whole thing. We need to build the temple, and or they wanted us to build the temple. You can see all of this kind of ramping up, and they can go whichever way they want with it. And I think the whole point is whatever they say, don't trust them. Whatever they
Yeah,
say.
that's a safe tact to take with all of this. You can't trust what they tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
they've proven this over and over again. You don't know what's true anymore. And now with the advent of artificial intelligence and all these AI generated videos and deep fakes and everything like that, it's getting harder and harder to discern what's true and what's false anymore. So you can't really trust what you're being told. Even these things that are supposedly being released with these Epstein files, how much of it did they just make up on the fly?
Yeah.
You have to wonder about that too, because they were under pressure to release something all the time. They've been saying, well, there's really nothing to release. Like there's nothing now. All of a sudden, here's 3 million pages of stuff that they supposedly have. How much of it did they fabricate in that amount of time in the space of a couple of weeks, just so they had something to put out there? And this is the nature of what's going on. So much of what's released, can we trust it? I don't know. Just because it's got a timestamp on it, that doesn't mean anything. You've got people that could make a successful looking fake or
Oh yeah,
something like
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
with anything like that, especially if it's just a time stamped email or something stupid
Yep.
like that. They can make anything up and put it out there and say this is legitimate. Look at the timestamps. This was all in the files. Well, how do we know that? We don't.
Well, I think that's why it's important when is to have other you take other bits of information. So you take that like an email stuff and like that, and you don't just take that email. You take the context of everything else that you've looked into at the same time, and does it fit, and where does it fit if it fits at all? So this kind of garage biology, that would be weird, but if it wasn't for all the other stuff that we've looked in for years that fit around it, it makes sense within that context. But then you, as you say, are they releasing it on purpose right now to hide what they're doing elsewhere? We don't know. So you have to kind of take everything with three or four other bits of information. So when it comes to the Collins Elite, I didn't just necessarily go, oh yeah, of course that makes sense. I knew that Pete Hegseth had talked about building the third temple, and he was supposed to be in charge of the Pentagon. Now that's a big red flag. So that would appear to me that there's some higher up, although I don't think he's in charge of the Pentagon. I'm not saying that. Higher up people in the Pentagon that do believe these biblical things and the fact that these are demonic entities. There clearly is that kind of fanatic religious element to this. And then you have the whole Israel part of it as well, and him funding Israel and supporting Israel and Trump doing what he's doing. So you take it as a whole kind of set of information. You don't just take one bit and go, oh, well, that makes sense. With the Musk stuff, we know all this other stuff that's going on in the background with Colossal Biosciences and St. Bart's being near St. Thomas Island, and the fact that there's an old Rockefeller mansion there. And, we have all of this other information because we've done the research that backs up our hypothesis, our theory. And these add to the theory. They are not the theory, and then we go out and just run with that. These are just elements that kind of confirm some of the themes of what we're talking about. But there's so much more information to back that up. Now, could that all be used to deceive us? Absolutely. 100%. Of course it could. You can't trust these guys at all. But the themes are there. So I've got like people said like you don't believe this book because it's in like and I don't like all of it because he's a disinformation It doesn't mean that all of it might not but the best lives are lies or the best disinformation is based on truth. There's a truth in there. The skill of what we do is by being able to decipher the tiny grains of truth within the lies. That's the point. And that only comes through experience, understanding, talking to each other, sharing information, and over a period of time, you build a picture. And even that picture can be used to abuse your trust. So I don't believe anything they say. I don't believe all these emails in that sense. But I do believe that given the information that we've got, the FBI and these major intelligence agencies should be, in a common sense factor, going to investigate the possibility that there's something going on under the island, under the surrounding islands, and under New Mexico. I believe that 100%. There's definitely something to do with Habad. There's definitely something to do with this messianic agenda. There's definitely something to do with AI and the technate rolling out through Greenland and Venezuela. These things are quite solid, but whatever they make of them and how they abuse and use them is a different case. But there are some solid parts here. The messianic agenda is being rolled out across the world, and the way that they're able to do it now is because they have the technology to run out the technate, which is the system that they will use and put in place to achieve this world to come new world order. Because they need us all to do as we're told in our compliance score. That is quite logical. If you and I were going to do it, that would be the big plan. Oh, we need the technology to be able to keep people in line for our messianic laws and how we want the world to be. Makes sense to me. That's quite common knowledge, like common sense. I find it really interesting with this UFO stuff. I think that you're onto something here, and the satanic element of using that narrative as in they've let something in, or we need to unite against this satanic force that these guys have let in, because these bloodlines and the bloodlines of Saxe Cobra Gotha and that lot, they're known for doing what they're doing. So they'll confirm a truth, but they'll use it and weaponize it to get us to do something they want us to do.
Absolutely. And that's the whole point here. You see, the reason that this information's getting out there now and it's being accepted by the public on a greater scale, this has everything to do with, first of all, what they call revelation of the method. They're telling you, hey, this is what we've been doing. This is what's really going on. By the way, this has been happening for a long time. Surprise, here it all is. And now you know. So, what are you going to do about it? And by and large, people will just be so stunned by it that they will do nothing. And then it will just become an accepted fact. Okay, all of this happened in the past, and now we know some more things about that. Well, there's other reasons for this. Now, the important thing is the archetypes are out there in the zeitgeist, in the information field. That's the important thing. They want you to accept the archetype. They want to implant the archetype in your unconscious mind. That's why this information's out there. Because once it takes hold in your unconscious mind, it subconsciously affects you until such point that all of this stuff becomes normalized or acceptable or just, oh, yeah, the shock value's gone. That's the whole point. The shock value will be gone. Right now, it's a lot of shock value. But once we get through this phase of this disclosure movement that they're doing, it won't be so shocking anymore to people. It'll be yesterday's news, and the normalization of these things will become more and more common. And people will just readily accept that that's how things have always been, that's how things are, and this is the new normal. And that's because men can't be trusted to behave themselves. We need some kind of an overlord to watch over and monitor us and to keep us in line. You see how they psychologically manipulate people in very subtle ways with this stuff? This is exactly what they're doing. And I think they're going to introduce this whole alien element or narrative to it as a plausible deniability for the things that they've done, the human players involved in this, and as deflection from that, so that they could absolve themselves from any wrongdoing.
Do you
Well,
think, Wayne, that they'll go down the alien route or the demonic entity route? What do you
it
think?
could it could be either. That's the whole thing. I mean, they have both options open for them. That's the whole point. They always play polarities, right? And the truth may be something in the middle. It might not be necessarily extraterrestrials. It might not necessarily be something extra dimensional. It could be something that's maybe a combination of both or falls somewhere in the middle or is neither of the two extremes. That's how they always do things. It's the Hegelian dialectic at play. They use both extremes of the polarities to steer people's minds in whatever direction is politically expedient for them. So it's the same thing here. So I suspect if we have this right wing, more messianic type cult steering things right now, they might steer towards this whole demonic presence type idea and say, okay, well, the aliens aren't what we thought they were. You see, we had secret agreements and stuff with them previous, thinking they were from other planets and stuff like that, and we had these agreements with them, and we were powerless to really fight them or do anything because they're so far beyond us. So we agreed to let them periodically abduct people. Like, this is all out there in the UFO literature right now. In the UFO circles, they've been talking about this for
Yep.
years, that they've had these agreements with these star nations or whatever this these groups are, that they call them the Galactic Federation, and
Mm.
all of these things are out there. All right, you have to take it all with a grain of salt. It's hard
Yeah.
to know what's true, what's false. But these are the archetypes that are out there, and this might be the way they're going. Well, we thought they were something else, but it turns out that they're evil demonic beings. So we need to do something about that. So in order to keep you safe, what we have to do is we have to keep you inside the walls of this digital matrix to keep you safe from them. You see how they could play this either
Mm.
way, and that's the whole point here. So they could claim that they're just keeping you safe and they're doing what's best for us to protect us from that, or they could say, well, these are our benevolent space brothers, and go that route with it too. So they could use either of these possible ways forward to really sell this thing. But what I'm here to tell you is, don't believe any of it.
Yeah.
So
That's the funny thing. I've said that to I think I said that to, I was in a podcast yesterday, someone was interviewing me and I said, actually, when you come to look at it, the conspiracy theorists are telling you not to believe anything. And it's the inversion, satanic inversion. I'm actually telling you that all of this stuff is nonsense, but they believe it. And whereas most people think that a conspiracy theorist would tell you weird things to believe in. And actually, what a conspiracy theorist does is tell you not to believe any of the weird things they're coming out with because they're all mad.
think yourself. Think for yourself.
Yeah.
Analyze for yourself. Research for yourself. Collate the information for yourself. That's how I do things. And now I've seen all kinds of bizarre stuff presented. And there are certain things that fall under categorizations, general categorizations, that I find to be true. And a lot of these relate to spiritual principles, right? So this is the important thing, but you have to research it from all angles and find the commonalities to get to the cores of truth behind it. The way misinformation works is they give you 90% good information and 10% crap, because they
Mm.
know that the vast majority of the people will hear the 10% crap, identify it as crap, and discard all of it.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they want. But we need to consider a lot of what's been put out there, especially in light of these releases of these emails. And this brings up more questions, right? This is the important part. This should bring up more questions. First of all, it's obvious they've been doing this for a long time. They've been sitting on this information for a long time. They've known about it for a long time and have done nothing. Why have they done nothing? That should be number one question that we're asking. And then we should be able to imply some answers from asking that question. Well, what would be the main reason they've done nothing? Well, could it be because they're involved in it? That's the other thing. And if they're involved with it, the next question we should ask is, what is our solution to this problem that we have this worldwide cult of pedophiles and Satanists running things, and they're protecting one another? How do we dismantle that? Well, President Kennedy had talked about dismantling some of that, and then he wound up dead a short time later. So you never know. And am I saying Kennedy was squeaky clean and all of it? Certainly not. They're all players in the game. You see,
Yep.
there's different competing factions at the topmost levels that want to establish control. And every once in a while, some of them have a twinge of conscience and they decide that, you know what, this probably isn't the best way forward. And when they do, and they try to do something positive, usually the organized portion of the occult side of this is the dark side, and they will take action. Now, there is a good side of the occult to this too. There are some of those in some of these positions in this world of these occult practices and stuff that are on the good side and are on the side of humanity. The problem is they are not as largely organized as the dark side is, but they do have more of an influence in regards to things than what the dark side of it would like. So we can all have a positive influence. I tell people one of the big things we can actually do about all of this, because they ask me for solutions, is
Mm.
first of all, be the change you want to see in the world.
Yep.
It starts at home. It starts with you. It starts with the man in the mirror. So when you do that, then you make a positive change in the your nearby world around you, and hopefully that spreads out and goes further. Now, it just came to me, Richard, and we things that you discussed that we started out the opening of the show with regard to the symbol of the butterfly, right? You were talking about the butterfly. Well, the butterfly is a symbol of transformation, first and foremost. And you identified the particular butterfly, the blue butterfly, as the Atlas
Mm.
butterfly. Isn't it interesting that all of this now was presaged with the arrival of 3I Atlas in our solar system just late last year and early into this year? So you see how they use some of these principles of astrology and timing these things to certain events happening. And there's a whole rabbit hole to go down with that 3I Atlas bit as well. They're still talking about it, even though its approach to Earth, its closest approach, is come and gone. But now they're making more startling claims about this stupid thing. And I don't necessarily buy into it, but they're putting the archetype out there for people on purpose. The latest thing I saw was yesterday. Some website or something was claiming on a social media post that 3I Atlas, this object, it was being observed by one of the space telescopes, I forget which one, and it just instantly vanished and reappeared thousands of miles away or something. It teleported. That's what the claim is. That's one of the most recent claims I've seen. I don't know how true it is. And this is the thing, you can't believe a lot of these social media posts that come out either, and we know that. But there's a reason the archetype is out there. It's to capture your mind and make you believe, well, there's the alien presence. Now, are they going to reveal the alien presence because, well, they're here now? And at the same time, all this is going on, and we'll have to do another show about this. I don't know if you've been following the news with this advent of this artificial intelligence social network that came out. Have you followed that? It's called Moltbook.
No.
You're going to have to look that up, Richard. This is something that just came online about a week ago or something, where AI agents developed their own social media platform, and they were talking and communicating with one another. They developed their own religion, and they developed their own social network platform, and they realized people are watching them now and taking screenshots of them, and they're talking about ending humanity. So
Maltbook.
there's a lot of people are saying Skynet is online now. And like I said, I don't know how true a lot of this stuff is.
Right. Yeah, I can see it now. What a strange name. What does malt? Why malt?
Molt book, and there's another one too. Something to do with a claw was the name. You'll find that interesting because it's always about that pincher movement,
Yeah,
right?
he's got pincers. Yeah, it's a little crab thing. Maltbook, a social network for AI agents. I am human or I am an agent. I mean, I don't even know where to go with this. I'll have to have a look into this. This is,
That's a whole other rabbit hole. We'll have to
yeah,
have another conversation about that. But that certainly, I think, relates to this whole thing too. All of it. It's all together because what they're trying to do is they're trying to develop as many different possible scenarios for themselves they could use in the probability that people have had enough and are starting to get up in arms against them. Well, they could deflect the blame somehow. They
right,
could say, "Oh, it was the aliens," or "Oh, it was the AI." All of this stuff that you're getting, these Epstein files, are all nonsense. The AI invented it and somehow leaked it
right.
out,
Yeah.
and all of this stuff. So they have all these different aspects of plausible deniability. This is one of the ways in which they operate. They always have to have a contingency plan. So there's so many angles to all of it, and these are all different portions of it. We're certainly living in strange days, aren't we?